Buckle up, buckle up. There is something that is coming out that is very personal to me. And part of the reason that I really was on board for RFK taking over Health and Human Services. Um, we have a Health and Human Services in this country, and yet people die like 10 years younger than they do in Europe. I would tell you when you're in Europe, food tastes better. Kind of. It depends on where you are. But it tends to be healthier in a way that is weird to me that Americans don't seem to care about. It's very strange. When my ex was here in the States, she was looking on item by item by item to see what was in the food because her thing was, you guys tend to be overweight, you guys tend to die sooner. And there's food items that you put in your products that are illegal to put in our products in Europe. Meaning there are things in our foods that in Europe they consider to be cancerous. And I'm saying in Europe they consider to be cancerous. I would imagine if you consider to be cancerous in one place, it's cancerous, especially if your scientists are effectively defined it and investigated as such. Okay, we have no such issue. Many of those things are currently in our foods. And when you're looking at kids, how the kids grow, the body is a complicated device. The things that you put in it matter. And those things matter, especially over the course of time, if you continuously put it in your system. It will produce illness. And the issue becomes, okay, well, you guys are saying this stuff is safe. This stuff is in the food of children, in the food of babies. We feed it to our kids. We eat it ourselves. And we do this over the course of a life. And then you get cancer. Or then you get some kind of other disease, maybe a childhood disease. And you think, this is just dumb luck. This was pick up the litter. I rolled the dice with life, and I just so happened to have crapped out. As opposed to, was it something that I consumed? Was it something that I drunk? Was it something that I breathed in that created the illness condition and the physical system? We don't ask that. We just assume God got involved. God wants me to be ill, and that's life. Okay, well, maybe that's not life. Maybe you were consuming something that you shouldn't have been consuming. Maybe you were inhaling something that you weren't supposed to be inhaling. I'm not talking about pot. I'm not talking about the vape. Those are things that you effectively roll the dice on. I'm talking about what our government, for whatever reason, considers to be okay and what corporations are allowed to put in various foods that may have negative, adverse consequence effects on a person, on a child, or as a person as they go into adulthood. And because the person lived their entire life healthy, they don't see what it was that caused the illness. They just know that they're ill. I'm saying, how do you have a healthy human services that seems to be asleep at the wheel? And for RFK, this being the thing that he wanted, I guess two things. One, the JFK files release. But two, I want to deal with issues of food. I want to deal with issues of childhood illnesses. I don't think these kids should be getting sick like this. I want to see if we can fix it. As someone with a childhood illness, two in fact, Osgood-Schlatters disease, when I was a kid, it's effectively, it was described as you're growing too fast for your body, effectively, which causes pain in the knees, constant, brutal pain from like 8 years old up until 17. And then at 17, being diagnosed with kidney failure. Okay, that sucks. Is it random? Did God get involved? Or did we have a society that let corporations do whatever the hell they wanted, put whatever they wanted into foods in a way where the government is asleep at the wheel? That is producing negative outcomes, whether it's autism, whether it's, I don't know, pick your illness. Is that what we're dealing with? Okay, well, I don't know. And RFK has said, like, I don't know either. But however, I want to be at the helm of an organization that can investigate, that can check, and that can, on some level, try to change those adverse conditions. This is why I was for RFK. I was for it for personal reasons. So RFK comes out with a video, and this is what he says in this video. And I approve of every word. Okay, I can't say it. I approve of his intent. I'll say it that way. This is Health and Human Services, a new one coming out with RFK.
Hi, I'm Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I'm the Secretary for the Department of Health and Human Services. In the final months of the election, President Trump repeatedly called for removing toxins from our food supply. He added his voice to the millions of Maha moms who were touting the Make America Healthy Again agenda. The first step is radical transparency because right now, not even the US government knows what's in our food. In 1958, the government created a designation called Generally Recognized as Safe, or GRAS, so that we can make common ingredients like salt and baking soda exempt from testing. But today, it isn't just salt and baking soda. Food companies and cooperative regulators have enlarged the GRAS exemption so that these companies can decide for themselves whether a substance is generally recognized as safe. No FDA approval is needed. European nations, on the other hand, require that a chemical be proven safe before it becomes a food ingredient. In our country, the GRAS standard means that every chemical is presumed safe until proven dangerous, and that proof might not happen until millions of Americans are sick with chronic disease. This mass experiment on the American population with GRAS has, in short, been a catastrophe. We now have around 10,000 chemicals in our food, while Europe has only 400. For example, titanium dioxide, potentially linked to DNA damage and cancer, is banned in the EU, but it's in our children's food. Potassium bromate, a suspected carcinogen, banned in Europe and Japan. And you guessed it, it's in our children's bread. Food dyes such as red dye 40 and yellow 5 and 6 come with warning labels in Europe. They're linked to behavioral issues in children, but in the US, they're generally recognized as safe. I can't really blame the food companies. They're just doing what we've allowed them to get away with in a system that's taken on a life of its own. We all agree now that it's time to change the system, and that's exactly what we're going to do. I am today directing the FDA commissioner to start the process of changing the rules to eliminate the self-affirming GRAS pathway for new ingredients. I'm also directing the FDA and NIH to ramp up post-market assessments of GRAS chemicals currently in our food so that we can rapidly identify the compounds that are making Americans so sick, and so that American consumers and regulators can make informed decisions. This issue isn't going away. Moms aren't going to return to wanting chemicals in our food that are banned in other developed countries. Even industry knows that we have to change. So I promise you, I'm going to work with all parties, the companies, the moms, the scientists, the consumer advocates, to make American food the healthiest in the world the way that it was when I was a child.
Agreed. I changed what I said. I agree with everything that he just said. Um, it is super weird that you would put a chemical in a food, and you have no idea whether or not that chemical is actually safe. And yet we do it. I mean, a corporation obviously would do it, right? Their job is to maximize their profit. If you get cancer in 30 years, okay, well, sad day for you. You can't prove that it came from that particular chemical. I'll go further. You put something in kids' food. That kid gets some kind of illness. Okay, how do you know that that illness came from that particular ingredient that was working and whittling its way, destroying the body of that child as the child was getting older? You don't. You have no idea. And his point is, okay, that needs to change. We need to change how we do this. If there are better health outcomes in Europe, and not just better health outcomes, people live longer. Okay, maybe they're doing something right. Maybe we're doing something wrong. Something needs to change. I am for that, full-throated for that. I understand that people have certain issues with RFK. I will tell you this: when I saw the food manufacturers and these people freaking out, my thought was, "Hey, I like that. Maybe I want them to freak out. Maybe I want them to take notice that this is a problem." They do not care about whether or not your kid gets cancer. Full stop. They don't. They care about making as much profit as possible. That is problematic from the standpoint of the American public. And yet it's invisible to the American public. Like, this is when you go and get your baby food, you're assuming that the baby food is safe. Certainly, you don't want lead in your baby food. Okay, fair enough. Everybody agrees upon lead. Okay, what about something more dubious? What about something more insidious that takes longer to develop in regards to illness? Okay, well, that is the job the help HHS. That is what they're supposed to be doing. You want the man on the wall making sure that your baby food, that your bread, that your candy is a safe product for you and your child. And I guess from my point of view, currently don't know that. Not just currently don't know that. I am of the mindset that it is most likely probably not safe, that they have stuff in those things that is causing problems to the physical system. And by the way, you can expand this to the air that we breathe, the water that we drink, all of that stuff. I guess my thing is you want a man on the wall. And RF Kennedy Jr., for whatever his failings, whatever his difficulties, he comes from this from the point of view of a corporate lawyer that fundamentally distrusts corporations, which I like. And so him going through this initiative, he is putting a standard out where you can judge him by that standard, which I also appreciate. He's saying radical transparency. I don't know if it's radical transparency, but it does seem to be a radical shift in the way HHS works and in the way that he wants HHS to operate. That is a shift I fundamentally agree with. So good on him for doing this. Let's see how far he can go with this. But good on him for doing it.